If stranded at the airport, would you rather spend the night at the hotel with a stranger or sleep at the airport? The plane should have landed 2 hours ago. Instead, Mia Kessler stood frozen in Terminal 5, watching her flight blink to cancelled in merciless red. Around her, chaos erupted, children wailing, businessmen shouting into phones, a woman sobbing near the coffee stand. Before we continue, I want to say thank you to our first 10 subscribers. Yes, 10 people believed in this channel enough to hit that button, and that means everything to me. New viewers, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support, even from one person, keeps these stories coming. Back to our story. 19 hours awake, half-finished presentation on her laptop, her father's medical bills stacking in her inbox, overdue notices she couldn't ignore, and now this storm, trapping her when she needed to be in California. She pushed toward the airline desk and collided hard with someone's shoulder. "Watch it!" she snapped. The man didn't even look at her. Charcoal suit, phone pressed to his ear, completely unbothered by the pandemonium. His voice carried over the noise, smooth and irritatingly calm. Entitled rich boy who couldn't even apologize. Mia rolled her eyes and pushed forward. 2 hours later, she'd secured nothing. Every hotel within 30 miles booked solid. The airline offered blankets and apologetic smiles. Mia stood defeated, watching families claim corners and business travelers curl up on benches. Her phone buzzed. "He's asking about you. Try to call when you can." Guilt crushed her ribs. Her father was dying, and she was trapped in an airport, helpless. "Excuse me." Mia turned. The man from earlier stood beside her, looking far too composed for someone stranded. Up close, he was worse sharp jawline, mouth curved between amusement and arrogance. "Do you need something?" He gestured toward the airline desk. "You've been standing here for 10 minutes. Either you're paralyzed or you've got nowhere to go. Neither is your business." "Fair enough." He pocketed his phone. "I've got a room at the Hilton. Double suite. There's a couch." Mia stared. "You're offering me your couch. I'm offering you a place that isn't the floor. I don't know you." "Cole Beckman." He extended a hand. "Now you do." She didn't take it. That's not how stranger danger works. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Look, I get it. Guy in a suit, in the middle of a crisis, sounds like the start of a bad Lifetime movie. But I'm not interested in whatever you're imagining. I'm tired, you're tired, and this storm isn't ending until morning. You can spend the night on a bench or you can take the couch. Your call." Mia's phone buzzed again. Another text. Another reminder that she couldn't afford to arrive at the office tomorrow looking like she'd slept in an airport. Her pride wrestled with practicality, and practicality won by a hair. "Fine," she said, "but I'm keeping my pepper spray within reach." Wouldn't expect anything less. The Hilton was a 15-minute shuttle ride through rain that hammered the windows like fists. Inside the hotel, Mia followed Cole through the lobby, hyper-aware of how out of place she felt in her wrinkled blazer and scuffed flats while he moved through the space like he owned it. The suite was ridiculous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway, a king bed with pillows and a sitting area with a couch that could sleep 2 people comfortably. Cole tossed his jacket over a chair, loosening his tie. "Bathroom's through there," he said, nodding towards a door. Mia set her bag down carefully, still half convinced this was a mistake. "Why are you doing this?" He glanced at her, something unreadable passing through his expression. "Does it matter?" "Yes." Cole considered this, then shrugged. "I saw you in the terminal. You looked like you were about to break down crying. I figured you could use a break." It was too honest, too direct. Mia didn't know what to do with honesty that came without strings attached. "Well, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I snore." Mia almost smiled. They settled into an uneasy truce. Mia claimed the couch. Cole took the bed. She tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Work, her father, the bills, the presentation she still hadn't finished. Every time she closed her eyes, anxiety yanked her back to consciousness like a fish on a hook. "You're thinking too loud," Cole said from the darkness. Mia opened her eyes. "I'm not trying to keep you awake. I wasn't asleep either." "Bad day?" Cole added. "A bad year." She heard him shift, the rustle of expensive sheets. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." "Fair enough." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, the storm continued its assault, rain streaking the windows in endless patterns. "Can I ask you something?" Cole's voice came softer this time. "You just did." Smart ass. There was warmth in his tone. Why do you look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders? Mia turned her head, even though she couldn't see him in the dark. What makes you think I am? Because I know what it looks like. I see it in the mirror every morning. Something in his voice made her chest tighten. Vulnerability. Carefully hidden, but there. She sat up, pulling her knees to her chest. My father's sick. Stage 4. The bills are crushing me. I'm working 60-hour weeks just to stay afloat. And I'm so tired I can't remember the last time I felt like myself. The confession spilled out before she could stop it. Mia pressed her face against her knees, mortified. She didn't do this. Didn't break down in front of strangers. Didn't let anyone see the cracks. That's a lot to carry alone, he said quietly. I don't have a choice. Silence. Then, what about you? What's your weight? Cole's jaw tightened. Family expectations. A company I never wanted to run. A life that looks perfect on paper but feels like a cage. He laughed, but it held no humor. And an ex-fiancé who won't take no for an answer. They sat and talked, two strangers sharing truths they probably shouldn't. Mia felt something shift in the air between them, a charge that made her skin prickle. She should go back to the couch, should thank him again and maintain the distance. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was. Cole met her gaze, and the intensity there stole her breath. You look like you need someone to see you, and I know what it's like to be invisible in a crowd. The words hit deeper than they should have. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs, and suddenly the space between them felt too small and too vast all at once. She should move, should break whatever spell was weaving itself around them. But Cole was standing, crossing the distance, and then he was in front of her, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his grey eyes. Tell me to stop, he said, voice rough. Mia's breath caught. Every rational thought in her head screamed at her to do exactly that. This was insane. She didn't know him. She doesn't do anything spontaneous or reckless. She didn't let strangers into her life, let alone into her space. But when he cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness, rational thought evaporated like morning mist. She didn't tell him to stop. His mouth found hers, and the world narrowed to the taste of him, the heat of his hands, the way he kissed her like she was something precious and breakable and worth savoring. Mia's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent electricity racing down her spine. They tumbled onto the bed in a tangle of limbs and desperate touches. His hands mapped her body like he was memorizing every curve, every shiver, every soft sound she made. Mia lost herself in sensation, in the way he whispered her name against her skin, in the delicious weight of him pressing her into the mattress. For one night, she let herself forget. Forget the bills, the fear, the endless exhaustion. For one night, she was just Mia, alive, and wanted in return. When it was over, they lay tangled together, breathing hard, the storm outside finally beginning to quiet. Cole traced lazy patterns on her shoulder, and Mia felt something dangerous bloom in her chest, something that felt suspiciously like hope. Stay, he murmured against her hair, and because she was weak, because the loneliness had been eating her alive for months, she did. Morning came too soon. Mia woke to pale sunlight filtering through the curtains and an empty bed. She sat up, heart sinking as she scanned the room. Cole's suit jacket was gone. His bag was gone. The only evidence he'd been there at all was the faint indent on the pillow beside her and the note on the nightstand. I had to catch an early flight. Thank you for last night. Take care of yourself. No number, nothing. Mia crumpled the note in her fist, anger and humiliation burning through her in equal measure. Of course he'd left without a word. What had she expected? A fairy tale? A connection that meant something beyond one desperate night? She'd been an idiot. A stupid, reckless idiot who'd let a pretty face and kind words trick her into thinking she mattered. Mia gathered her things and dressed quickly and left the hotel without looking back. On the plane to California, she stared out the window and made herself a promise. She would forget Cole Beckman, forget his touch, his voice, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the world. It had been a mistake. The office building in downtown Los Angeles gleamed like a monument to ambition. Mia walked through the marble lobby with her shoulders back and her game face on, despite having slept maybe 3 hours on the plane. The boardroom was already full when she arrived. Her team sat around the long table, laptops open, coffee steaming. Mia took her usual seat near the head of the table and booted up her presentation. Their team control manager, Richard Holt, stood at the front, looking pleased with himself in that way that usually meant changes were coming. "Morning, everyone," Richard began, clapping his hands together. "I know it's early, but I've got exciting news. As you know, we've been restructuring our international partnerships, and I'm thrilled to announce we've brought on a new senior manager to oversee our London operations and integrate them with our California team." Mia's stomach dropped before her brain caught up with why. The door opened. Mia's world tilted sideways. Cole walked in wearing a different suit but the same confident stride, the same infuriating composure. His eyes swept the room in a practiced assessment, and then he went absolutely still. He smelled it first. That perfume. The one that had haunted him for 3 nights, clinging to his clothes, his memory like smoke he couldn't wash away. His gaze found her, and the world tilted sideways. "The universe is fucking with me," Cole thought, his heart hammering against his ribs. "This can't be happening," Mia thought, her fingers freezing on her laptop keyboard. Recognition flashed between them like lightning, raw and exposing. For half a second, something vulnerable crossed his face. Shock, want, memory of her, gasping his name in the dark. Then it was gone. Cole's expression went blank, smooth as marble, professional as a corporate headshot, like he'd never seen her before in his life, like he hadn't traced every curve of her body with desperate hands, like she was just another employee in just another meeting. He turned to Richard, shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm looking forward to working with all of you." His voice was controlled, measured. "I've reviewed your recent projects, and I'm impressed with what I've seen. That said, there's always room for improvement, and I intend to push this team to exceed every expectation." His gaze landed on Mia again, lingered for a fraction too long. She saw the challenge there, the unspoken question burning in his eyes. "Are you going to say something, or are we pretending this never happened?" Mia lifted her chin and held his stare, her expression carved from ice. Two could play this game. She'd learned long ago how to survive in rooms full of men who underestimated her. If he wanted pretense, she'd give him a performance worthy of an Oscar. The meeting continued, but Mia barely heard a word. Her mind raced, replaying every moment from that night, every touch, every whispered confession. He'd known. Or had he? The shock on his face had seemed genuine. Cole couldn't stop noticing things he shouldn't. The way Mia held her pen, tapping it against her lips when she was thinking, the sharp intelligence in her eyes when she challenged one of his points about the London integration. That goddamn perfume that was driving him insane, filling the conference room like an accusation. Her refusal to acknowledge what had happened between them was somehow worse than if she'd confronted him. He'd expected gratitude, maybe, or embarrassment, anger even. Instead, she gave him ice. Professional courtesy wrapped around steel. It made him want to shake her, made him want to corner her and demand to know if she'd thought about him at all, if those 3 nights had haunted her the way they'd haunted him. When the meeting finally ended, Mia gathered her things quickly, desperate to escape before he could corner her, but Cole was faster. As the others filed out, he positioned himself near the door, effectively blocking her exit. "Mia," his voice was low, meant only for her. She met his eyes, keeping her expression neutral even as her pulse hammered. "Mr. Beckman, we should talk." "I don't think that's necessary." "I think it is." Mia stepped closer, lowering her voice to a dangerous whisper. "What exactly do you want to talk about? How you disappeared without a word? Or how you're now my boss and we both have to pretend we didn't sleep together 3 days ago?" Something dark flashed in his eyes. "I didn't know you worked here." "That makes it better?" "It makes it complicated. Then let me simplify it for you." Mia's voice was ice. "That night was a mistake. It meant nothing. As far as I'm concerned, we met for the first time this morning, and that's the only story that exists. Are we clear?" Cole's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might argue, might push back with that same intensity she'd seen in the hotel room. Instead, he stepped aside, giving her space to pass. "Crystal clear, Miss Kessler." She walked past him without another word, but she felt his eyes on her back the entire way down the hall. And despite her best efforts, despite every wall she tried to rebuild around herself, one thought kept circling through her mind like a vulture. This was going to destroy her. The next 2 weeks were hell. Cole threw himself into the job with the kind of intensity that bordered on obsessiveness. He reviewed every project, questioned every decision, and pushed the team harder than Richard ever had. Some people thrived under the pressure. Others cracked. Mia refused to do either. She met every challenge he threw at her with steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. When he questioned her strategy in front of clients, she defended it with data and precision that left no room for argument. When he assigned her impossible deadlines, she delivered early. When he tried to undermine her authority, she reminded him in front of the entire team exactly why Richard had made her lead strategist in the first place. Their colleagues noticed. Of course they noticed. The tension between Mia and Cole was thick enough to choke on. Whispers followed them through the halls. Bets were placed on who would break first. But beneath the professional warfare, something else simmered. Something neither of them acknowledged, but both felt every time they ended up alone in a conference room or working late in adjacent offices. It happened on a Thursday night, 3 weeks after Cole's arrival. Mia sat in her office reviewing contracts, the city lights sprawling beneath her window like a blanket of stars. Most of the building was empty, the silence pressed against her ears. A knock on her door made her look up. Cole stood in the doorway, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, looking as exhausted as she felt. "We need to go over the Mazir proposal," he said. Mia gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Then, let's go over it." He entered, closing the door behind him, and the small office suddenly felt suffocating. They worked in tense silence, reviewing numbers and projections, their shoulders nearly touching as they leaned over the same documents. Mia tried to focus, but her traitorous body remembered too well what it felt like to have those hands on her skin. "This section needs to be stronger," Cole said, pointing to a paragraph. His voice was rough, strained. "I disagree. The data supports the approach." "The data is incomplete. Then get me better data, instead of criticizing mine." Cole's head turned, and suddenly they were face to face, inches apart. His eyes searched hers, and Mia saw her own frustration reflected there, her own barely controlled desire. "Do you ever stop fighting?" he asked quietly. "Do you ever stop pushing?" "I can't help it." His voice dropped lower. "Especially with you." Mia's breath caught. She should move, should put distance between them. But her body refused to cooperate, frozen in the magnetic pull of his proximity. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "I know. We worked together. I know. If anyone found out." "I know, Mia." Cole's hand came up, hovering near her face but not quite touching. "Tell me you don't feel this and I'll walk away. Tell me that night meant nothing and I'll never bring it up again." She opened her mouth to lie, to say exactly what he'd asked for, but the words wouldn't come, because it had meant something. Despite her best efforts to forget, to bury it under layers of anger and professionalism, that night had cracked something open inside her, had reminded her what it felt like to be seen, to be wanted for more than what she could produce or achieve. "I can't," she admitted, hating herself for the weakness. Cole's control snapped. His mouth crashed against hers, and Mia met him with equal desperation. Papers scattered to the floor as he lifted her onto the desk, positioning himself between her thighs. His hands were everywhere, relearning her body like he'd been starving for it. Mia's fingers worked at his belt, frantic and graceless, and he groaned against her neck. "We shouldn't," she gasped, even as she pulled him closer. "Tell me to stop." But neither of them could, not when his touch felt like oxygen and she'd been drowning for weeks. They came together in a fury of need and frustration, swallowing each other's sounds, racing toward oblivion like it was the only thing that made sense in a world that had stopped making sense the moment they'd met. Afterward, reality crashed back in with cruel efficiency. Mia straightened her clothes with shaking hands, while Cole leaned against the desk, chest heaving, looking as wrecked as she felt. "This can't keep happening," Mia said, voice unsteady. "I know. I mean it, Cole. We have to—" "I know." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "But it's too late to pretend there's nothing here." Mia wanted to argue, to deny it, but the truth sat between them like a living thing. Whatever this was, it had teeth, and it wasn't letting go. The next morning, Cole was in a meeting that lasted an hour. Mia tried not to think about it as she worked, but anxiety gnawed at her stomach. When Cole emerged an hour later, his face was carved from stone. He found her in the break room. "We need to talk." Mia's throat tightened. "About what?" "My father is arriving from London next week. He's putting pressure on the Mazir deal. It's the biggest merger we've attempted, and if it falls through, we lose millions and half our international credibility." Cole's voice was controlled, but she heard the tension underneath. He wants me married, or at least publicly committed to someone respectable. Says it shows stability to conservative investors. Mia's blood ran cold. And you're telling me? Why? Cole met her eyes, and she saw the calculation there. The business mind working through a problem. Because I need your help. Absolutely not. Hear me out. No. Mia set down her coffee with enough force to slosh liquid over the rim. I know where this is going, and the answer is no. The company needs this deal. Your job depends on it. Don't you dare use that against me. Cole stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to be honest. This is bigger than us. If we pull this off, you'll have the resources to do groundbreaking work. Hell, you could write your own ticket. But we need to convince my father and the Mazir executives that I'm settled, committed, ready to lead. So find someone who actually wants to be your trophy wife. His jaw tightened. I don't want a trophy wife. I want you. The words hung between them, weighted with more meaning than either acknowledged. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs. Every rational part of her screamed to refuse, to run as far from this disaster as possible. But then she thought of her father, the medical bills that arrived like clockwork, the treatments he needed that her insurance barely covered, the way he tried to hide how sick he felt because he didn't want her to worry. If this deal went through, she'd have leverage, power, options she'd never had before. How long? She asked quietly. A few months, maybe less, just until the merger is finalized. And after? After, we end things quietly. Blame busy schedules or creative differences. No one gets hurt. Mia laughed bitterly. You really believe that? I believe we can control the narrative, if we're smart about it. She studied his face, searching for cracks in the armor. Why me? Really? Cole's expression softened. Because that night in London, you were the first person in years who didn't want something from me. You saw me, not my last name or my bank account. And because, despite everything, I trust you. The confession hit deeper than it should have. Mia closed her eyes, weighing the risks against the rewards. It was insane, dangerous, exactly the kind of reckless decision she'd spent her entire life avoiding. Fine, she said, but we set boundaries. This is business. We attend events together, play the part in public, but behind closed doors, we're colleagues. Nothing more. Agreed. And when this ends, you don't sabotage my career. I would never. Swear it, Cole. He held her gaze. I swear. They shook on it, like a business deal, because that's exactly what it was. Mia told herself she could do this, could pretend to be in love with a man she barely knew, a man who made her feel too much and think too little. She told herself it would be fine. She was wrong. The news broke 3 days later. A carefully staged photograph of Cole and Mia at a charity gala, his hand at the small of her back, her laughing at something he'd said, appeared in the business section of every major paper. The caption speculated about Cole Beckman's mysterious new relationship and what it meant for Beckman Industries. Overnight, Mia became someone people noticed. Colleagues looked at her differently, clients asked about her plans, and the attention, while uncomfortable, came with tangible benefits. Her ideas suddenly carried more weight. Her strategies were implemented with less resistance. Cole's father arrived the following week, a silver-haired man with Cole's eyes and none of his warmth. Charles Beckman surveyed Mia like she was a stock he was considering purchasing, and she felt every inadequacy in her background under that gaze. So you're the woman who's captured my son's attention, Charles said over dinner at an impossibly expensive restaurant. I suppose I am. Mia kept her voice steady. What do you bring to this relationship besides your position at the company? Cole's hand found hers under the table, squeezing once in warning or support. Father, it's fine, Mia interrupted. She met Charles's stare directly. I bring intelligence, strategic thinking, and the ability to challenge your son when he needs it. I'm not interested in his money or his name. I'm interested in building something that matters. Charles's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Bold. I can see why Cole finds you intriguing. The dinner continued in that vein, each question from Charles designed to probe for weaknesses. Mia held her ground, refusing to be intimidated despite her racing heart. By the time they left, she felt worn out and exhausted. In the car, Cole turned to her. You were incredible. I was terrified. It didn't show. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, and Mia realized he was still holding it. My father doesn't give praise easily, but he respects you. That's rare. Mia wanted to pull away, to maintain the boundary they'd agreed on, but his touch felt like an anchor in choppy water, and she was so tired of drowning alone. This is getting complicated, she said softly. I know. We're supposed to be pretending. I know that too, but neither of them let go. The weeks that followed blurred together in a series of public appearances and private moments that felt dangerously real. Cole attended her father's hospital appointments without being asked. Mia learned his coffee order and his tells when business deals stressed him out. They fell into a rhythm that looked like a relationship from the outside and felt like one on the inside. The Mazir deal progressed. Meetings went well. Investors were impressed by Cole's apparent stability and Mia's strategic brilliance. Everything was going according to plan. Then Christabel Harlot arrived. She swept into the Los Angeles office like she owned it, all sleek blonde hair and designer clothes that probably cost more than Mia's car. Cole's ex-fiancée. The woman he'd mentioned that night in London, with barely concealed pain in his voice. Mia watched from her office as Christabel embraced Cole in the lobby, her laugh carrying across the space. Something cold and sharp lodged itself in Mia's chest. Jealousy, she recognized with disgust. She had no right to feel jealous. This wasn't real, except it was starting to feel real. And that was the problem. Christabel made her presence known immediately. She attended meetings she wasn't invited to, offered opinions no one asked for, and always found ways to position herself next to Cole. Her father, Mia learned, was a key player in the Mazir merger, which meant Christabel had leverage and wasn't afraid to use it. That night, Mia worked late, trying to ignore the sound of Cole and Christabel's voices drifting from his office. When Christabel finally left, Cole appeared in Mia's doorway looking exhausted. Want to talk about it? Mia asked. Not particularly. Cole, she wants to reconcile, says she made a mistake leaving. He ran a hand through his hair. Her father is threatening to pull out of the deal if I don't at least consider it. Mia's heart dropped. So consider it. I don't want to, but you might have to. Cole crossed to her desk, bracing his hands on the surface and leaning close. Is that what you want? For me to go back to her? It doesn't matter what I want. This is business, remember? That's what we agreed to. Fuck what we agreed to. His voice was rough with frustration. Tell me you feel nothing and I'll walk away. Tell me this has all been a pretense and I'll go make nice with Christabel and save the goddamn deal. Mia stood, meeting him at eye level. What do you want me to say? The truth. The truth is this is insane. We barely know each other. This started as a business arrangement. That stopped being just business weeks ago, and you know it. So what? Mia's voice cracked. So what if I feel something? It doesn't change anything. Your father still controls your future. Christabel's family still controls the deal, and I'm still just the girl from the airport who wasn't supposed to matter. Cole's expression shattered. You matter more than any of this. Then prove it. The words hung between them, a challenge and a plea. But before Cole could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and cursed softly. Emergency meeting with my father and the Mazir executives. Tomorrow morning. He looked at Mia with something like desperation. I need you there. Of course. And Mia, whatever happens, whatever they say or offer, I need you to trust me. She wanted to. Goodness, she wanted so badly it hurt. But trust was a luxury she'd learned not to afford. I'll try, she said. It would have to be enough. The meeting started badly and got worse. Christabel sat beside her father at the conference table, looking like victory personified. Charles Beckman presided at the head, his expression unreadable. The Mazir representatives watched everything with calculating eyes. Let's be direct, Michael Harlot, Christabel's father began. We have concerns about the leadership structure of this merger, specifically about young Mr. Beckman's ability to provide stable, long-term vision. Cole's jaw tightened. My track record speaks for itself. Your personal life does not. Michael glanced at Mia with barely concealed dismissal. We've done our research, Miss Kessler. Student loans, credit card debt, a father with significant medical expenses. One might wonder about your motivations in this relationship. Heat flooded Mia's face. My personal finances have nothing to do with... They have everything to do with this, Michael interrupted. We need to know that Cole's judgment isn't compromised by someone who might be using him for financial gain. That's enough. Cole's voice cut through the room like a blade. Miss Kessler's integrity is not up for debate. Christabel leaned forward, her expression sympathetic in a way that made Mia's skin crawl. "Cole, darling, no one is attacking her, we're just being practical. You and I have history. Our families understand each other. Doesn't it make more sense to build something stable together?" Charles cleared his throat. "She has a point, son. The harlot connection would simplify things considerably." Mia felt the room tilting. She'd known this was a possibility, but hearing it spoken aloud felt like a knife between her ribs. She forced herself to remain still, to keep her face neutral even as everything inside her screamed. Cole stood abruptly. "I need a moment with Miss Kessler. Alone." He didn't wait for permission, just grabbed Mia's arm and pulled her into the adjacent room. The door closed behind them with a definitive click. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I'm so sorry." "It's fine." Mia's voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "This is what we signed up for, right? The illusion was always going to shatter eventually." "This isn't an illusion." "Yes, it is. Christabel's right. You need stability, and I'm just—" "Don't." Cole gripped her shoulders. "Don't diminish yourself because they're trying to diminish you. You're brilliant and strong and worth 10 of Christabel. But she's what they want, what your father wants, what the deal needs. I don't care what they want." Mia laughed bitterly. "Yes, you do. You care about the company, about your father's approval, about not failing. I see it every time you talk about this merger. And that's okay, Cole. That's being responsible. What about what I want? What you want doesn't always win against what you need." Cole's hands fell away, and the absence of his touch felt like a physical loss. "So that's it? You're just going to walk away? I'm giving you permission to do what you need to do, to make the smart choice. The smart choice is you. The smart choice is saving the deal and your company." Mia forced herself to step back, to create distance even though every cell in her body screamed to stay close. "I'll stay through this meeting. I'll play the part. But after, we end this. Quietly, like we planned. Mia, we have to go back." She smoothed her skirt, rebuilt her armor piece by piece. "They're waiting." Back in the conference room, Mia delivered the performance of her life. She defended Cole's vision for the merger with data and passion, outlined growth strategies that made the Mazir executives lean forward with interest. She was brilliant and professional and everything a strategic lead should be. And through it all, she felt her heart breaking in slow motion. The meeting ended with tentative approval to move forward, but Christabel's father made it clear they wanted stability, and soon. Charles echoed the sentiment. As people filed out, Christabel caught Mia's arm. "You're smarter than I expected," she said, her voice low enough that only Mia could hear. "But intelligence only gets you so far in our world. Cole needs someone who understands his life, his responsibilities. You're just a distraction he will get tired of eventually." Mia pulled her arm free. "If that's true, why do you seem so threatened?" Christabel's perfectly made-up face tightened. "I'm trying to save you the embarrassment of discovering you were never in the running. Or maybe you're terrified that Cole finally found someone who sees him as more than a bank account and a last name." For a moment, Christabel's mask slipped, revealing something raw and almost vulnerable. Then she smiled, cold and brittle. "Enjoy it while it lasts." She walked away, leaving Mia standing alone in the conference room, wondering if she'd just won a battle or sealed her own fate. The days after the meeting were torture. Mia threw herself into work, staying late, arriving early, anything to avoid prolonged contact with Cole. He tried to corner her a dozen times, but she always had a meeting to get to, a call to make, an excuse to slip away. She told herself it was for the best, that cutting ties cleanly would hurt less in the long run. She was lying, but the lie was easier than the truth. On Friday night, she finally allowed herself to break down. Alone in her apartment, she curled up on her couch and let the tears come. Tears for the relationship that wasn't real, but had felt more genuine than anything she'd experienced. Tears for the future she'd almost let herself imagine. Tears for being stupid enough to fall for a man she could never actually have. Her phone buzzed. A text from Cole. "Please talk to me." She deleted it. Another. "I'm not giving up on this." Deleted. "I know you're scared. I am too. But we're better than this." Mia stared at that one for a long time before finally typing back, "Some things aren't meant to be fixed." She turned off her phone before he could respond. Monday morning, Mia arrived in chaos. People clustered in the lobby, voices raised, phones out. She pushed through the crowd and froze. On the massive screen that usually displayed company news, a headline blazed, "Beckman here, in secret affair with employee." Below it, photos of her and Cole, some from their public appearances, others clearly taken without their knowledge. The article detailed her background. Her debts heavily implied she'd used her position to trap a billionaire. Mia's blood turned to ice. "Miss Kessler," Richard's assistant appeared at her elbow. "Mr. Holt needs to see you immediately." The walk to Richard's office felt like marching toward an execution. Inside, Richard sat behind his desk, looking simultaneously furious and exhausted. Cole stood by the window, his expression carved from stone. "Sit down, Mia," Richard said. She remained standing. "I assume you've seen the article." "Everyone's seen it. It's trending on 3 platforms." Richard rubbed his temples. "I need to know the truth. Is this relationship real, or was it a setup for the Mazier deal?" Mia's throat tightened. The truth was complicated, layered, impossible to explain in a way that wouldn't sound damning. "It started as—" "It's real," Cole interrupted. "It started unconventionally, but what we have is real." Richard looked between them. "The Mazier executives are spooked. Harlot is threatening to pull out. Charles is on a plane back from London. This is a disaster." "I'll fix it," Cole said. "How?" "By sacrificing Miss Kessler's reputation. Because that's what this looks like from the outside, that she slept her way into this position, and you were naive enough to fall for it." Fury blazed across Cole's face. "Anyone who thinks that doesn't know her." "I quit." Mia's voice cut through the argument. Both men stared at her. "What?" Cole stepped forward. "No. I'm formally resigning, effective immediately." Mia focused on Richard, keeping her voice steady. "I'll provide a transition plan for my current projects, but I won't be the reason this deal fails, or this company's reputation suffers." "Mia, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She finally looked at Cole, and the pain in his eyes almost broke her resolve. "You need to save this merger. I'm giving you the space to do it. By falling on your sword? By being practical." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Mia, I appreciate the gesture, but it's not a gesture. It's a decision." She pulled an envelope from her bag. She'd written the resignation letter over the weekend, hoping she wouldn't need it. 2 weeks' notice, unless you need me gone sooner." "Mia," Cole's voice cracked, "don't do this. I'm sorry." And she was. Sorry for falling for him. Sorry for thinking they could make this work. Sorry for being naive enough to believe she belonged in his world. "I hope the merger goes well." She left before either of them could stop her, walking through the office with her head high even as whispers followed her like ghosts. At her desk, she began boxing up her things with mechanical precision. Photos of her father, the awards she'd earned, the project binders she'd spent months perfecting. Jenny appeared, eyes red. "Is it true? You're leaving?" "It's true." "Because of him?" "Because it's time. I've closed enough deals for the company." Mia taped up a box. "Take care of yourself, Jen." She carried her boxes to her car in 3 trips, each one feeling like shedding a layer of the person she'd tried to become. The smart strategist, the woman who could balance in heels and negotiate billion-dollar deals, the girl who'd almost convinced herself she could have it all. By the time she loaded the last box, the sun was setting. Mia sat in her driver's seat and let herself cry one more time. For the job she'd loved, for the man she'd lost, for the version of herself she'd left behind in that office building. She started the engine and drove away. She didn't see Cole standing at his office window, watching her leave with his hand pressed against the glass like he could reach her across the distance. She didn't hear him tell his father to go to hell when Charles suggested they issue a statement painting Mia as unstable. She didn't know that he spent the next 3 days locked in his office, dismantling every plan that didn't include her in it. All she knew was that she was alone again. And this time, it hurt worse than anything ever had before. The weeks that followed were brutal. Mia filed for unemployment, applied to every consulting firm in the city, and watched her savings dwindle. Her father noticed the strain, asked questions she deflected with false cheer. She was fine. Everything was fine. It was all a lie. She avoided social media, news sites, anywhere Cole's name might appear. She didn't want to know if he'd reconciled with Christabel. Didn't want to see photos of them together at some gala, his hand at the small of her back the way it used to rest on Mia's. Not knowing was agony. Knowing would be worse. 3 weeks after her resignation, Mia's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello? Miss Kessler, this is Victoria Mazier. We met briefly during the merger discussions." Mia sat up straighter. "I remember. How can I help you?" "I'd like to offer you a position. Head of Strategic Development for Mazir Industries, West Coast Division. Your salary would be double what you made at your previous position, and you'd have complete autonomy over your projects. The words didn't compute. I don't understand. Cole Beckman provided us with a comprehensive review of your work. He also made it very clear that if we wanted the merger to succeed, we needed people like you shaping it. Victoria's voice warmed. He spoke quite passionately about your abilities, and after reviewing your portfolio independently, I agree, you're exactly what we need. Mia's throat tightened. Did Cole ask you to call me? No. He simply opened the door. Whether you walk through is entirely up to you. After Victoria hung up, Mia sat in stunned silence. Cole had vouched for her, had given her an opportunity, even as she'd walked away, had refused to let her sacrifice matter. The realization hurt and healed in equal measure. That night, she composed an email to Victoria accepting the position. Then she opened a new message, addressed to Cole, and stared at the blank screen for an hour. Thank you seemed inadequate. I miss you were too vulnerable. I'm sorry didn't cover the magnitude of her regret. In the end, she wrote nothing, closed the laptop, told herself that sometimes silence was its own language, but she couldn't stop thinking about him. The breaking news hit on a Tuesday morning. Mia saw it on her phone while getting coffee. Beckman Air walks away from family business. Her hands shook as she opened the article. Cole had resigned from Beckman Industries, refused to go through with the merger under his father's terms, walked away from millions to preserve his integrity. The article included a quote, "Some things matter more than business deals. Some people are worth more than their balance sheets. I'm done sacrificing what I value for what I'm told to want." Mia read it 3 times, her heart hammering. The comments section exploded with speculation. Was this about the woman from the scandal? Had Cole Beckman actually chosen love over money? What did this mean for the merger? She didn't care about any of it. She only cared about the man who'd just set fire to his entire life. Her phone buzzed. Jenny, "Oh my God, have you seen the news?" And then, finally, an unknown number. "I'm at the airport, Heathrow, where this started. If you want to end this for real, don't come. But if there's any part of you that thinks we could build something real, I'll wait. Terminal 5, Gate 43. I'll wait as long as it takes." Mia stared at the message until her vision blurred. Every rational thought screamed at her to stay home, to protect herself, to not risk her heart again on a man whose life was chaos and complications. But love wasn't rational, and neither was hope. She grabbed her keys and ran. Traffic was a nightmare. Mia white-knuckled the steering wheel, her mind racing. What if she was too late? What if he'd already left? What if this was another mistake in a long line of mistakes and she was about to destroy herself one final time? But what if it wasn't? The street was chaotic as always. Mia abandoned her car in short-term parking, not caring about the cost, and sprinted through the terminal. Gate 43. Where was Gate 43? She found it after what felt like a long minutes. And there, sitting on the same kind of uncomfortable airport bench where they'd first met, was Cole. He looked up as she approached, and the hope that flooded his face could have powered the entire city. "You came," he said. "You're an idiot." Mia stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. "You threw away your company, your inheritance, everything. I threw away a life I didn't want for a chance at one I do. What if I'm not worth it? What if we crash and burn?" Cole stood, closing the distance between them. "Then we crash and burn together. But Mia, I'm so tired of living a life that looks perfect on paper but feels empty. You make me feel alive, challenged, real. I don't want to go back to who I was before you." Tears spilled down Mia's cheeks. "I'm scared." "Me too. I don't know how to do this, how to trust this." "Neither do I." He cupped her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. "But I want to figure it out with you. Not as your boss, not as part of some fake arrangement. Just as the guy who fell in love with you in an airport during a storm and has been falling harder every day since." Mia's breath caught. "You love me?" Terrifyingly, completely, inconveniently. She laughed through her tears. "Those aren't romantic adjectives. I'm better with business proposals than love confessions." Cole's smile was crooked, vulnerable. "Work with me here. You're still an idiot, but I'm your idiot. If you'll have me." Mia rose on her toes and kissed him. Not desperate like their first time, or frantic like their stolen moments in the office. This was slow and deliberate and full of promise. A kiss that said yes and finally, and let's try this for real. When they broke apart, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I don't have a plan, Mia. For the first time in my life, I have no idea what comes next. Good, she smiled. We'll figure it out together. 3 months later, Mia stood in the lobby of her own consulting firm. Kessler Strategic Solutions occupied a modest office space in downtown LA, but it was hers. Built from the ground up with her vision, her rules, her integrity, Cole was her first official client, helping her navigate the business side of independence while she helped him restructure his personal investments into ventures that actually mattered to him. They made a good team, in business and in life. Her father was responding well to the new treatment her increased income afforded. He'd met Cole twice now, and while he'd grilled him with the intensity of a seasoned investigator, he'd ultimately given his approval. He looks at you like you hung the moon, her father had said. That's all I need to know. The Mazir merger had eventually gone through without Beckman Industries. Christabel's father had found other partners. Charles had tried to reconcile with Cole, but the damage ran too deep. Some bridges, once burned, stayed burned. Cole didn't seem to mind. He was building something new, something that was his own. They were building something together. Mia looked up from her desk as Cole walked in carrying coffee and croissants from her favorite bakery. He'd started doing this on Fridays, showing up unannounced with breakfast, and that smile that still made her heart skip. Busy? He asked. Always. Good. I like you to be busy. It means I have to work harder to distract you. He set the coffee on her desk and leaned down to kiss her. I have a proposal. Business or personal? Both. Cole pulled a folder from his bag. There's a contract I want you to look at. Long-term partnership. Excellent benefits. Some travel required. Mia raised an eyebrow and opened the folder. Inside was a plane ticket. To London. First class. Departure date 3 weeks away. I want to take you back to where we started, Cole said softly. Stay at the same hotel. Same suite if they have it. But this time, I want to wake up next to you. No running, no hiding. And the contract? He pulled out a small box, and Mia's heart stopped. This is me asking you to be my partner. In every sense. Business, life, all of it. I know it's fast. I know we've barely had time to breathe. But I've never been more certain of anything. Mia stared at the ring, tears blurring her vision. You're proposing to me in my office? I'm proposing to you in the life you built. Because that's who you are. Strong, independent, brilliant. And I want to spend the rest of my life supporting that, celebrating it, and being worthy of it. You really are terrible at romantic speeches. Is that a yes? Mia launched herself into his arms, laughing and crying simultaneously. Yes, you impossible man. Yes, they kissed, knowing the future they were brave enough to choose. Outside, Los Angeles continued its relentless pace. But inside that small office, time slowed. Two people who'd met in chaos and found each other in the storm held on to something rare. Love. Real, messy, imperfect love. And it was worth every risk they'd taken to find it. Thank you, beautiful people, for staying till the end. Please subscribe, like, and share.